Farmar here. Wanting to go over some of the new things that are coming out in 8.2. Blizzard just announced that 8.2 is coming out next Tuesday on the 25th. Unlucky for me, I don't think I'm getting Glider this season. I've been struggling trying to learn some Resto Druid to get teams and stuff, but anyway, this video, I'm going to be going over some of the new things that are coming out in 8.2, how I think they're going to affect Feral Druids, what I think Feral Druids are going to want to play in both PvE and PvP, and then just kind of give you my opinion overall of what I think the state of the game is going to look like. Of course, this is all just my opinion, and I don't know how it's all going to unfold. Blizzard, they might do some additional tuning to some of these items. They might be doing some additional class tuning. We're just going to have to find out. But I'm going to give you what I think is going to go down and maybe what we're looking at in 8.2. So overall, I'm really excited for this patch. There's new Azerite traits, which I have to admit I'm not very excited for. They seem kind of interesting, and they don't feel very well thought out in terms of design. I think Blizzard was trying to take a unique route when it comes to bringing in some raid flavor in terms of reliability and accountability and teamwork with the Azerite traits. And also kind of going a little bit above and beyond with one of these Azerite traits. I'll talk about it now, but Arcane Heart seems interesting to me. Basically, whenever you deal 15 or 1.5 million damage or healing, that's the number that is here. This number might be tweaked. Like I said, I don't know if it's going to be tweaked or not. But this is a major Azerite trait slot, okay? And every 1.5 million damage that you deal is going to increase your main stat by 519. Or sorry, it says your highest stat, so this might actually just be one of your off stats, not your main stat. Yeah, that's not actually very clear. But anyways, it's going to increase that for 15 seconds. And I don't know how great that sounds. It seems like it'd be very delayed. I guess it'd be like a 15-second time, and whenever that procs, you maybe want to time some of your cooldowns. I'm not really sure. This one's gonna be weird to test and to play around with. Not sure how I feel about it. And then on top of that, it also is gonna heal for 5% of all arcane damage taken. Yeah, overall, a little bit underwhelmed with the at least how this comes off right now. The next trait I would say we could talk about is Loyal to the End. Essentially, this is a mastery increase, and then it also will increase the mastery of your allies, right? So the idea behind this is everybody runs this, and then everybody's getting a huge mastery increase throughout the raid, because it's going to also increase your mastery. So you get a base increase of 150 and then an additional 37 for each ally that is also running this trait. So not sure how it's going to play out in terms of classes that are not very mastery specific or care much about their masteries. For Feral Druids, getting all this mastery from our allies could be really good. I don't know how they're going to balance this trait, though. It seems kind of messy. I'm hoping they don't, lower feral damage or lower any class that relies on their mastery in order to compensate for everybody in the raid running this, and all of a sudden you have a massive amount of mastery. It's also going to be weird to gear around it, because as Ferals right now, the sweet spot is you want about 30% crit strike and you want about 50% mastery. If you start, getting to the point where you are gearing up and this is going to put you, at that 50%, I don't know if it's worth to run other traits, or you just want all the extra mastery. It's going to be kind of weird. I don't know how they're going to balance it, and we're just going to have to see how it rolls out. Another thing is it's kind of getting to the... it's also getting to the kind of Ret Paladin thing, where when Ret Paladin, if you're not familiar with Ret Pallies and raids, whenever an ally dies in the Ret Pallies raid, they get an increase to their damage, right? And it refreshes every time somebody dies. Well, one of the last effect on this is whenever you die, your allies get crit, haste, and versatility equal to their mastery bonus from the trait. So this seems like it's going to be pretty necessary for progression, and it doesn't seem to have a limit or a timer on this. So if somebody dies, I think everybody in the raid that's running this trait will get a permanent increase to their crit, haste, and versatility. So this could be pretty huge for progression. Not sure how it's gonna roll out with the balancing and the gearing around it, but I like the attempt here. It's a nice kind of flavorful teamwork kind of Azerite trait. Next we got Undulating Tides. Undulating Tides is basically just a chance to proc frost damage. It's not going to slow your target like what's it called? It's the current one. It actually shares an icon with this. I can't think of the name. There's only like 2 pieces of gear that have it, but it has a chance to deal frost damage and slow the target by 20%. This one's not going to do the slow, but it is going to do the frost damage proc. And it's on a lot of pieces, so you can stack this 3 times. I don't know if this damage is going to proc often enough to really make a difference, but if it does, then this could be a really huge trait. Also really good for progression, because the trait, the piece of this, the cherry on top is what I'm trying to say for this trait is when you drop below 50% health, you're going to gain a pretty big shield, 35k per trait, right? So this could also be pretty necessary for progression. Just depends. I think it's going to be better for tanks than for everyone else, but if everybody's running this, and there's a part of a fight that drops everybody below a certain threshold, this could be very good and kind of allow your healers to rebound a little bit on and keep their big cooldowns for a little bit longer. So anyways, and that does have an internal cooldown of 45 seconds. So anyways, overall, I don't think these Azerite traits are that great. I think Undulating Tides is going to be pretty good for PvP, especially for Feral Druids, because we don't have that great of Azerite traits, honestly. So I think this is going to fill kind of that void of what's good in PvP for Ferals, and it gives us extra damage, which we need, and it gives us extra survivability, which, we could always use. So I think this is going to be the go-to. I think it's going to be pretty good for Feral Druids in PvP, and it's going to be good for tanks in PvE. I think Loyal to the End is what everybody's going to be taking for progression rating, though, just because it gives you an insane amount of stats. Alright, so anyways, those are the new Azerite traits. I also wanted to talk about the new loot that's coming out, specifically the trinkets and weapons. So Blizzard went ahead and they did kind of an original spin on the effects of items with Crucible of the Storms, and they've been kind of controversial, but overall I think they've been a success. I think in PvP, it's been a mess to balance them, but I think PvP has a slew of issues that are separate from those items altogether. That's just my opinion. I think the pace of PvP is just too slow right now overall, and I think the items just kind of, exasperate that a little bit. But these items that I'm about to go over don't really help that case at all, so I imagine they're going to be tuned in PvP, perhaps at a later time, but have fun with them while you have them. I recommend you do some heroic Eternal Palace and get these items and go to Battlegrounds and have fun with it during the off season. So anyways, we'll talk about the pacing of PvP another time. I think most of you that follow my stream know my overall opinions on it, and so I'm going to stick to the items here. So we've got 2 pole arms that are coming out for Feral Druid. Well, I say for Feral Druids, right? But Agi polearms. So we've got the Aquapulse Trident. I think looks really cool. It's a trident. I don't know why, but I really like tridents. And I don't know. I just think they look cool. It's a pretty basic weapon though. So it's just haste mastery. Not the best, not the worst. Mastery is one of our best stats. Haste is kind of meh. So anyways, just a base stat trident. The item I'm excited for is the Shiver Venom Lance. So the reason I'm excited for this is because it actually it's kind of another teamwork thing, right? So if you have multiple people running this polearm, it's going to proc damage, right? It's going to proc frost damage, notably. And then if you have an ally that that is also using this weapon, then it's also going to deal AoE damage. Not too shabby. I think that this is going to be really cool, maybe tricky to use in a comp like Jungle Cleave because there's potential it could break a trap, but it's I think it's cool, and it's going to give us kind of a little bit extra damage. Also, its stat on it is crit, which is very good for ferals. Not our best stat in PvP though. In PvP, our best stat is mastery, hands down. In PvE, it's basically a balance between mastery and crit. So I think that the extra proc damage from this though, if it procs often enough, if it procs anything like the legs from Crucible, I think this weapon's going to be pretty much bis for PvP ferals. Anyways, going on down to the trinkets now. There's a few really flavorful items. I would say that all of these are seemingly fun, and I'll go over the strengths of them in PvE and PvP. So we've got the Ashvane's Razor Coral, right? This one does not seem like it's going to be very good in a PvP situation because it primarily gives you critical strike. Critical strike, as you all know, or maybe you don't know, is only going to do 150% of your damage rather than the normal 200% in PvE. So while this could be really good in PvE to give you that extra crit, and give you that quick boost of damage there, PvP, I'm not thinking this is going to be a very useful trinket. It is cool. I like the flavor of it. It's not just a standard trinket that does some proc or gives you, a certain amount of stats. It is an on use, and it does require you to balance stacks and things like that. So I think that it's a cool trinket. Dribbling Ink Pod. Okay, this one, I'm going to come back to that one. That one, I think, could be the best trinket for Feral Druids in PvP. And we'll come back to it, because I do want to talk about it last. Edicts of the Faithless. Okay, so this is a really cool trinket. Essentially, and I don't know why this is labeled under Strength and Agility. I think this is more of a tanking trinket than anything, but maybe I'm wrong. Essentially, what it does is every 15 seconds you're going to get a shield. So it's kind of like the Resounding Protection, except it's 15 seconds rather than 30. And it's only for physical damage. Or is it? It has an on use that actually shifts it. So you can have this trinket either absorbing physical damage, or you can have it absorbing magic damage. And whenever the shield is broken, the next shield, so that in the next 15 seconds, that shield is going to be increased by 10%, up to a total of 100% increased shielding. That seems amazing. If you're a Feral Druid, the hardest comps to play against, right, are going to be like Walking Dead, TSGs, any melee cleave that's just going to sit on you, make your life very difficult, make you sit in bear form, and never get a clone off. Those comps, this is going to punish that a little bit, right? This is basically another follow-up to the Trident. And I think Trident's going to be pretty viable for a little while through the next season, although it will be eventually deprecated. But yeah, I think this trinket's going to be pretty strong for Feral Druids in PvP. File of the Arcane Tempest is essentially gives you a chance to proc some arcane damage. And yeah, it's more of a passive trinket. I don't think it's I think it's unique, and it's gonna give you some AoE damage in Mythic Keystones, and then in a rating perspective, right, on single target, it actually does a little bit extra damage. So yeah, this is kind of a passive trinket. It's going to give you a little bit extra damage output. Don't think it's going to be that useful in PvP unless it's proccing a lot in PvP. So we'll have to test this one out a little bit. Vision of Demise. This one's not very great for Feral Druids. Essentially, you increase your haste percentage or your haste stat, and then you actually increase it more depending on the health of your target. Haste isn't too great. It increases damage of our bleeds, sure, but it's not one of our best stats anymore, so I don't think this is going to be that great of a trinket for Feral Druids. Going down to the tank trinkets, and we'll come back to the dribbling ink pod, I promise. We've got 2 new trinkets, okay? We got Chain of Suffering. Now, I'm actually excited for this one. Some people think it's a little bit underwhelming. A few of my friends I was talking to about this earlier today, actually, said that this seemed a little bit underwhelming. They weren't thinking about it from a PvP perspective, because if this trinket works the way that I expect it to, this could be a huge out against very heavy CC chain comps, right? If you can use this on your healer, and it breaks their CC, right? It breaks them out of that polymorph. It breaks them out of that fear. This is going to be huge. If it breaks them out of that trap, right? This is going to be huge. So this is basically a 2-minute cooldown that's going to reduce the amount of damage you take and possibly get your healer out of a sticky situation with some CC. I think this is going to be really useful. So maybe underwhelming in PvE because of how fast, somebody might drop in health in PvE when you're getting hit by a boss, but this in PvP, I think that's a 2-minute cooldown that I am willing to take. So if I get this will be, one of the trinkets I'm running in PvP, especially against mage comps and hunter comps. Okay, so next trinket, Bloodthirsty Urchin. This one is interesting. So they kind of took what the Refracting Prism did and modified it into healing. So essentially what this does is whenever you take damage, it's going to convert that into healing, stored healing. Whenever you're injured, every 3 seconds, that healing is going to tick on you until you're out of that healing pool. I don't know how great this is going to be in PvP, because if you think about it, right, if you take damage, 10% that goes into your healing pool, and then immediately is going to tick on you as a heal, right? In PvP, I don't see this ever stacking up to that maximum 126k pool that you see there, and then expending over time the way that you're wanting it to where you're actually, getting constant valuable healing. It's going to heal you passively over time. I don't think it's going to be that great, though. I might be wrong. The nice thing about Refracting Prism is you're constantly gaining that shield until you are at a cap, in which case you stop gaining the shield, but then as soon as you take damage on that shield, it starts gathering up again. This one, you have to take damage first, and then it expends the healing automatically every 3 seconds, if you're below 100% health. So I may be wrong. I don't think this is going to be too great in PvP. Definitely has its place in PvE, and I think that's great. But I think they kind of learned their lesson from Refracting Prism and designed this trinket to be more useful in PvE than PvP. I may be wrong, though. So feel free in the comments to let me know your opinions on Bloodthirsty Urchin. Anyways, guys, just kidding. That's not going to be it for the video. I want to go over what I think the best trinket's going to be for specifically Feral Druids, but melee cleaves in general. if you're running jungle cleave, if you're running TSG, if you're running, you know, turbo cleave, if enhancement shamans are good again, I think one of the best trinkets, and this is going to be really good for PvP, is the dribbling ink pod. Essentially what happens is you have a chance on your damage abilities to put a stack on your target, okay? It doesn't specify how many stacks you can get on your target. I imagine it's something reasonable, like maybe 3-4 stacks, but it doesn't say, and we're gonna have to test it and find out. But essentially what happens is when your target drops to 30% health or lower, all of those stacks, boom, fire off. And deals, it says here, 10k damage per stack. Nature damage. So that means it eats through armor. It's not stopped by armor at all. So I'm thinking this is going to be almost mandatory to have on any melee cleave comp. Including kitty cleave, TSG, turbo cleave, jungle cleave, windwalker DK, pretty much every melee cleave is going to have this. And you've got both of these stacking for each DPS. If that target ever drops with 30% health, oh my god, think about windwalker monks, right? Time that with a touch of death, oh my god. That's going to be crazy. That's going to be crazy burst. I think that could be really good for the PvP scene, honestly. Healers are going to hate it, but I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to speed games up a little bit more. Well, I even mentioned DHDK. There you go. So, anyways, my top 2 picks right here for trinkets are going to be Dribbling Ink Pod with the Chain of Suffering, okay? And you can trade the Chain of Suffering out for the Edicts of the Faithless. Edicts of the Faithless and Chain of Suffering, I think, are going to be exchangeable depending on what comp you're going against. So, anyways, look out for these trinkets and make sure you guys are rolling for tank whenever you're going against Zekul here. I think that's all I wanted to go over for 8.2 right now. I am going to be releasing a video probably in the next couple days about the Azerite, or about the essences, the new essences. They've basically reached an end with their tuning on them, and I wanted to go over with you guys what I think the best in slot essences are going to be for both PvP and PvE. Yeah. Oh, that's right. I was just reminded, Touch of Death got nerfed. It's replaced with Touch of Fatality now. So, anyways, new weapons look cool. New raid looks cool. New items, they look pretty fun. I like that Blizzard's keeping this unique kind of design with these items. And yeah. Anyways, guys, let me know in the comments what you think. If you think my predictions are wrong for what's going to be good in PvP, tell me. I want to hear your guys' opinions, because all these trinkets look really fun. And TS3, I'm telling you, that's my pick for what I want in PvP. But anyways, guys, thank you for watching, and I hope you guys have a good one. And be looking out for that new video on the essences, and I'll be going over the new feral rotations with that in both PvP and PvE. So anyways, guys, thank you, and yeah, have a good one, guys.